Now I mentioned it and we're gotten to that point. The way I like to sort of teach you is that I want to kind of get you familiar with the syntax. And if you notice with our functions, I wanted to show you simple functions and everything like that because we're going to be using this concept often. Now we're going into object-oriented programming, otherwise known as OOP. Let me get out of here. 1 second, sorry. 1 second. And object-oriented programming is virtually mandatory. We need object-oriented programming. Excuse me, I'm just cleaning something up. We need object-oriented programming for everything that we're going to involve ourselves in later. Object-oriented programming is a beautiful form of functional coding and everything. I've never used it when I was doing my Scratch code. It wasted so much of my life. Making objects and forming objects from classes is just, it's the best way to fly. And once you get used to it and you know how to create your own classes and everything, your life will become so much better. It will become so much easier because we've already made our own object from a specific class right here. If you notice, with just one line of code in this new PDO class, we created an object called con, which can hold everything that this PDO class has in store, which means the prepares, the executes, all that stuff that we've done, getting all the information that we need from this can easily be controlled by just this little reference. Now this is going to be a multi-parted thing. I want you to make sure that you know what you're talking about. I want to make sure that you know what I'm talking about. I want you to really get an understanding as to what we're doing here because it is a little bit more advanced, but in the end it is almost essential to making really thorough websites. And again, listen, you don't have to do any of this. You don't have to make your own functions. You don't have to do any kind of object-oriented programming. You don't need to do it. You can just go be happy with doing stuff like this. You could be happy with doing MySQLi connections. Whatever makes you happy is up to you. This is a good way to really enhance your programming, really enhance your development, and just take off the keystrokes, man. Make it easier for you so you don't have 10,000 lines of code. Trust me, I had to make websites that were running the management side of businesses. It's not fun when you have to go through a million lines of shit that you hand typed from scratch just to find one thing. If you had a class, you could say, oh yeah, let me add this to it, and then from that point on, you could just keep calling objects. Now let me just make sure that you understand. A class is the big, grand classification of things. The object is one of the things in the class. So let's just go like this. This PDO is a class that PHP developers had created where a simple reference can give you access to your MySQL, whatever query, side, backends, and then you can use all these different functions or whatever within that class. This con is an object that we created from this class. So there are many you could just keep putting out. You could do another connection object from the PDO class. PDO class doesn't change. The references or the objects within the PDO class, you can call them a million different things. And you can make one of them, SQL. You can make another one Postgres. You can make another one whatever you want to make it, as long as it connects to a database, and you'll just be reusing the same class to create your objects. So if you want to create a class, we're going to make another page. We're going to call it classes. And what we're going to do with this classes is we're going to open up a PHP, obviously. And the way that you call a class, the way that you create a class, is you just type in class, and we're going to do the person analogy. We're going to open that up. Now, at this point, you can't just go name and go like this, right? Like every person has a name. If you do that, you're going to see, well, we haven't called it yet, but if you do that and we try to create a new person, like we did before, we're going to say me equals new person, we're going to get a fatal error. Because, oh, I didn't include it yet. Includes classes. We're going to get a parse error because name doesn't mean anything. Is it a function? Is it a constant? What does it mean? What we have to do is we have to tell PHP what name is. At this point, it's nothing. But if we were to say public name, now we know we can use name. So there's no error. But use it to do what? Now there's public, there's a private identifier, which we can say age, and there's also a protected, which we can say height. Okay. Public means anyone can use it. Anyone can reference it. Anyone can do what they want with it. Private means that only within this class, so only the programmer, developer, whatever, within this class, within these brackets, can reference the private age. And height or protected means, no, actually, yeah. Protected means only within this class. Private means that it can't be referenced outside, period. Like nobody else but anyone using this class. Like it can't be referenced. Like if you had an age, no one would see the age. Nobody. You couldn't reference it, nothing. And we'll get into that. Protected means you can only like do stuff with it in this class. Like you can't do anything with private anywhere. You can only do anything with protected within person. When we start moving on to furthering our object-oriented programming knowledge, you'll see what this means. At this point, it doesn't mean anything. But now, like I said, name doesn't mean anything. It's not doing anything. It's just name. Now we can reference, we can say, okay, now that we've created this me, we can now reference echo me, and then remember that, the arrow, name, but there's no name. Name doesn't mean anything. So now if we were to say name equals CD the Bookman, now we have CD the Bookman because the name equals CD the Bookman. But I mean, do you really want to just have CD the Bookman on a person? Like that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't do anything for anybody else. So what they have is they have functions that are called getters and setters. And what functions that are called getters and setters do is the getters get the input and the setters set the input. So let me just show you what, we'll do, just give you a little bit of a reference. If we were to go PHP, sorry. If we were to do that and we look at W3 schools, if you see here function set name, this name equals name. Function get name, return this name. What that does, and this is a public, so we don't have to tell. We could say function get name, and we'll open this up and we'll say function set name, and we'll open this up. What this does is it will get information or get input from the user, and then it will give you the name. So we'll say this, right? This name equals name. And then we will return this name. Now, what you're seeing here, this variable, this is how you would reference in objects. This is how you would reference something. This is like a meta reference. It references itself. Okay? Even though this is a function, And even though we put in an argument, what we're saying in terms of the class itself is that this name is not this, it's this. It's not that. If you want to make this a little bit more reasonable to understand, well, maybe not so much in this. Oh, no, wait, sorry. I got this opposite. Okay, I'm sorry. Got this in reverse. Okay. So, if you wanted to set the name, right? This name is not this identifier. This name is an argument to explain what this identifier is going to equal. If you want to reference something within a class, you have to use the this so that it knows you're referencing something within this. It's self-referencing. That's what this identifier equals. So what we're doing, what we just did here is what we just did here. We made an object called me, which is a new person, and we wanted to echo out its name. The name is referencing this identifier in this class. When you're inside the class, you have to identify this by using this. Okay? So, what that means now is if we were to go set name cd the bookman, oh yeah, wait a minute. Maybe I was wrong. I guess we do have to keep it the same thing. Nope. No, we don't have to keep it the same thing. Let me just check this name. See, like, that's why I don't like to... Oh yeah, I didn't echo it out yet. I'm sorry. Yeah, let's keep it like this. I'm sorry. This is why I typically don't reference anything else. I just kind of do my own thing. Because I wouldn't, like, there are setters and getters and all that stuff, but I wouldn't do it like this. I would just make a function that just does it all in one shot. I'm just showing you the way that they do it. We set the name. We didn't echo it out. We got to, the return, I'm sorry. The return is the get the name. My fault. Yeah. Okay. And then there you have it. Okay, so let me just explain this. Sorry about that. So anyway, like I said, you don't have to make this argument in the set name the same as this if you don't want it to be confusing. You can give it anything. You can give it, blow me. And then you can just make this, blow me. It doesn't matter. What this function does, see, it doesn't change. What this function does is this function sets it. After that, we then have this function getting it. Which is why, like I said, I would rather just make a function saying make name, and then say this name, blah, 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 and then return this name in one shot. But for whatever reason, I mean, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same fucking thing. So if I go here and say make name, if I go echo make name, it'd be the same. There's no difference. It's the same thing. It just, I don't know. I mean, like, look, there's a reason for everything, which is why sometimes I go to W3 schools. But I just don't get it. I don't get what. And it's not just W3 schools. There are tons of other, like if you did a framework known as, which one is it? It's a PHP framework. It's like one of the older, more popular ones that people love it. And every time you create, what the hell is it called? Oh, come on, man. All right, I gotta look it up now. Symphony, my God, Symphony. Every time you would create like an object, it would give you the set name, set this, set that, and get this, get that. It gives you the getters. You really could just do it in 2 lines. There's really no point to it. But like I said, like now if we were to try to say function make age, I'm old, and we were to try to do the same thing, age equals I'm old, return this age. If we were to put in the public parameter in the function, which you can do, and we were to go echo me make age 100, and we'll just say 100. It's a public function, and you can do that for a private. Now, if we were to say a private function, so once you get a better idea of private and protected and everything, now you get private method, now you get an error. See, because you can't use this outside. So the age itself, although we call the private, I think I'm just gonna make this public. We'll get more into public and private and protected when we start making more classes and everything like that. But if you were to do like, if you were to say, even on a public identifier, if you were to make it a private function, you can't use it. It'll give you an error message. If you were to make it protected, you could. Whoops. Let's save as. It would still give you like an error because protected and private, they work. They work in their own, you know, their own scopes. Like you would only really use private or protected if you were creating classes that carry the principles of other classes. And again, we're not getting into that at this point. But if you were to sort of reference one class to another, then you would want to kind of use those because sometimes the main class, you don't want to change anything from it, you know, but again, I just introduced it. I don't really want to get into it right now. We really should just be focusing on just making this class. I'm jumping ahead too much. Excuse me. I'm sorry. So let's just make these things. Let's just make them publics, and let's just keep making these functions about tall. And again, the reason why I'm changing these arguments is because I want you to see that they're not the same. Like this is not the same as this. This is referencing this identifier. This is not referencing this. Okay, this is the argument that we're passing to make names, make heights, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And once we've set it, we're just giving it an identifier. We're just giving it something. Once we set it, we're just giving it a value, I should say. So that's your introduction to object-oriented programming. It was a little confusing because, again, I'm working off like everybody, like I'm working off W3 schools and they drive me nuts. It's a little confusing. Just know that always always put what you want your identifiers to be public. And I mean, I use like this. Private protected, when they are identifiers within the class that's identifying them, you can use them publicly if the function's public. But we couldn't use those identifiers in another class. That's the difference, okay? So we'll get more into private protected. We'll actually start doing more things with this class, but I'm just trying to get you to understand that when you build a class, you have identifiers and you have functions and everything, and you're creating what you want to create and then referencing it in a means that now, instead of having to go through all this trouble again separately, from now on, wherever you include the classes page, you can just continue to make new people, and from there, get all those functions. Now, again, it doesn't look like much right now because we're just making height, we're just putting a person together. But when we come back, we're going to be doing a little bit more functionality. We're going to be carrying classes over and different references and whatever. It's going to be a lot of fun. And when you see what it does, when you see what classes can do for you, you're going to really, really enjoy object-oriented programming. I hope. See you then.